150 million years ago, this guy roamed the Earth. A piece of natural history that may be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We're going to start at £150,000.
Now it's up for auction. A scientific specimen that could end up going to the highest bidder.
1,400.
As an entomologist, I know the value of research. It's all about access. The more science, the more knowledge. Scientists love to collaborate, that's how we learn. But what if this specimen is sold to a wealthy collector who won't share it? Does anyone have the right to own a dinosaur? Or is natural history just like fine art? The stakes are high, the prices are even higher, because this is the business of bones. This is TechKnow, a show about innovations that can change lives.
Genetically modified food.
We're going to explore the intersection of hardware and humanity, and we're doing it in a unique way. This is a show about science by scientists. And now, TechKnow investigates the business of bones. Welcome to TechKnow here in London. We're standing in front of the iconic Westminster Abbey, a place known for having the buried bones of kings and queens and people like Charles Darwin, Isaac Newton. Impressive, yes, but we're here for bones that are a little bit older, 155 million years older. We're here for a dinosaur.
Lot 55 now.
The rolling hills of West Sussex, England.
The exceptionally rare juvenile Allosaurus.
A fairy tale backdrop.
We have called him Little Al.
But if you're thinking castles or kings, think again.
We're going to start low on this one, and we're going to start at £150,000.
TechKnow has traveled to Billingshurst, England to attend the auction of a very unusual piece. Meet Al, the juvenile Allosaurus. Wow. There it is.
There it is.
That is pretty amazing. How old is this?
This is about 155, 160 million years.
Rupert van der Werf and Errol Fuller are two key players behind what will be a true TechKnow adventure. Errol is the curator of this auction, and Rupert is one of the owners of Summers Auction House. This interview takes place just 24 hours before the gavel will drop. What stands out to you? What makes this so unique?
Well, first of all, it's a juvenile Allosaurus, and that's an incredibly rare, even unique thing. As far as I know, this is the best example of a juvenile one.
You can see the teeth here, they're very sharp, and they're designed for grabbing on and not letting go. And then when you look at the claws on the forelimbs, again, they're for cutting and slicing and grabbing hold of things.
The asking price for all that history? Between 300 and 500,000 British pounds.
And if you were invited to a sort of dinner party and you walk in and you see that, you're going to say, oh, God, what's that?
Is that the appeal of a dinosaur like this?
Well, dinosaurs are kind of iconic, aren't they? You know, there's no other real expression for it.
There's something new in Los Angeles.
Dinosaurs are in fact iconic. 1.2 million people came to LA's Natural History Museum last year to see this 34-foot-long, 7,000-pound T-Rex.
Introducing Thomas the T-Rex.
But this isn't business as usual. This is the business of bones. Morning. So I just saw you did get a phone call earlier.
Yeah, just a few minutes ago.
Interested
yeah.
buyer?
Someone very interested, a private buyer, not a museum. He wanted to know the exact size of it.
The business of bones has been booming since 1997, when Chicago's Field Museum spent $7.6 million on a T-Rex named Sue.
They're wanting that at $7,600,000. Up here.
Dinosaurs now replacing Degas as the darlings of the jet set.
It's like owning a Rembrandt in art, you know, it's kind of, ooh, there it is.
But for the past week, all eyes have been on this specimen. So why sell natural history?
Well, Why not? Why sell art? Why sell clocks?
We very much look at a lot of it as art.
A juvenile Allosaurus has its advantages. At 9 feet long and 3 feet high, apparently it can fit in your home, if you have the right-sized home.
I think he wants to display it in his house as a kind of, if you like, a trophy, but I wouldn't like to say he's a trophy hunter.
Here in the museum, we are used to seeing things like dinosaurs, but now private collectors are spending a huge amount of money to have them in their home. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that comes at a cost for science.
Dr. Luis Chiappe is the scientist in charge of one of America's premier fossil collections at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles. He discovered this guy, Thomas the T-Rex. To you, a dinosaur, do you think it belongs in a museum?
Yes, I think that a dinosaur, especially one that is rare, should belong in a museum.
The Badlands of Montana. This is the dig where Thomas the T-Rex was discovered. Dr. Chiappe and the folks at LA's Natural History Museum do digs like this every summer. What they find ends up in their collection. So this is what dinosaur fieldwork looks like.
This is rock, for example, but you can see the bone here in green.
But museums and scientists aren't the only ones who can organize dinosaur excavations.
This is the best femur head that I could have ever dreamt of.
The man in charge of this dig is Raymond Albersdorfer. He also discovered Little Al, the Allosaurus. What can you tell me about Raymond, the dinosaur hunter?
Raymond is a qualified geologist who's always been obsessed with fossils. He's got, he had access to this quarry in Wyoming. He knows the subject inside out.
This is the great debate. Are dinosaurs a business or science?
Collectors are after the fossil and not that much after the context in which the fossil is found. And it's really the context that gives you a lot of critical information.
So what would you say to scientists who may be concerned about what would happen tomorrow? About the sale if it goes to a private individual?
I'd say grow up, wake up and realize that this is the real world.
When it comes up, you can then find something.
Meanwhile, inside the auction house offices, the clock is ticking. Tomorrow's the big day. So we're about 24 hours away from the auction. How are you feeling?
Well, we're feeling quite confident, but you never know till what happens on the day, What happens on the day is what happens.
It looks like the next chapter of this specimen's 150 million years of history will just have to wait to be written. So this Allosaurus could end up?
It could end up anywhere in the world, yeah.
Where would you like to see it end up?
I think ideally, I would like it to go to a museum, but I don't very much care if it doesn't.
Coming up, auction day. We're just hours away from this thing happening.
Yeah.
My fingers are crossed, my toes are crossed, everything I can cross is crossed.
We'll be right back with more of the business of bones when this special edition of TechKnow in London continues. We want to hear what you think about these stories. Join the conversation by following us on Twitter and at aljazeera.com/techknow. November 25th, 2015. Good morning.
Good morning, all. How are we getting on?
Today is the day. Auction day.
And all I'm seeing.
Quivering in anticipation.
Yes. Are you guys already getting some calls?
We are getting calls, yes. Yeah, we've sort of...
The latest chapter in a story that dates back to the late Jurassic period is about to begin.
Good morning, boys.
Good morning. We're just hours away from this thing happening. How are you feeling?
Well, a little bit nervous, but I'm trying to control it, as you can see.
You got hopes?
We just keep our fingers crossed, and it starts getting exciting now.
My fingers are crossed, my toes are crossed, everything I can cross is crossed.
This auction is full of some pretty amazing exotic things. We've got a hippo skull from Africa, Over here, you can see some macaws that come from South America. But what has everybody talking is 155 million years old. It's got a mouthful of teeth. This is juvenile Allosaurus, and today is auction day. You must be pretty busy.
Yes, I'm waiting for a couple of TV crews to turn up any minute now. So we've got the BBC and ITN coming along.
According to the auction house, Al is attracting international attention. It is now mid-morning. Just a few hours before the sale, nerves are getting frayed. Have you taken any calls this morning?
Yeah, just taken 3.
Any last-minute things you got to do?
Certainly have several cups of tea and try and stay calm, really.
And what's your sense? Are people interested in this Allosaurus? You getting some phone calls?
Yeah, oh yes, yeah, no, it's you know, made a lot of people interested because it's such a unique thing.
So the phones will be busy. But questions remain. Will the specimen sell? Will it even set a record? We can't gauge interest from inside the auction room, but the crowd looks a bit thin. Then there are concerns about quality of the Allosaurus and authenticity. So there are a lot of bones in this thing. How do you know they all come from the same dinosaur?
Well, we know that because we know how it was excavated and exactly where it was excavated, and we've got documentary.
Also, because it's a juvenile, they are so rare. The chances of 2 juveniles of the same species being preserved in the same area are, you know, it's virtually inconceivable. It's not impossible, but it's pretty, you know, difficult to imagine.
If this is a rare specimen, it raises both the stakes for science and the bidding price. Now, this thing is one of 2 in the world. Who's most of the interest coming from?
We've had interest from several museums, and we've had interest from a couple of private collectors. Whether any of that interest will transfer into bids, I don't know. I imagine it will, but I don't know.
The Allosaurus is only 9 feet in length. Museums often like to go big, so that could mean this dinosaur would have a better chance of going to a private collector.
And so we start then lot 1, and the massive quartz and agate freeform.
So right now the auction is just starting. We have the auctioneer calling it out. The phones are ringing. We've got people that are going to be bidding in the audience. It's on.
And it's with me.
Seated in the middle of the audience, curator Errol Fuller. We've been told the one very interested buyer, identified only as a wealthy London collector, is on the phone. It appears Rupert Vanderwerf will handle that bid. There are just under 200 items being auctioned today, but none like the Allosaurus.
£550. And 48 now, the very rare fossil penguin.
So we're at lot 48 right now. That means that there are just 7 more to go until the Allosaurus is up for auction.
450, 450 pounds, 480, 500, 950 at the back. 2000, 2002, 2004, 2006.
So this is it. We're at lot 55. We're about to find out where 150 million years of history ends up.
Extremely rare, one only of a couple known in existence, and we have called him Little Al. And we're going to start at £150,000. With me at 150, 160, 170 with me, 180. At £180,000, then with me at 180, 190 now, at £190,000. At £190,000, it's with me, it's against you on the phones, at £190,000 then, at £190,000. Last chance then on telephones, at £190,000, all done at 190. 190,000. Come and talk to us afterwards.
190,000 pounds. I think it's a bit lower than they were hoping. So the future remains to be seen for this dinosaur. It only takes a few minutes, and then it's over. So how do you think it went?
It was a bit of a bloodbath in places, I have to say.
There will be no sale today. The highest bid from an unidentified private collector in London was only £190,000. TechKnow was told the price is below the reserve price, or the owner's minimum asking price.
It means that you're more reliant on a bunch of uber-wealthy people, and you are entirely dependent on whether they want to come out to play.
The auction is over. The dinosaur did not sell, but the story doesn't end here, right?
Absolutely. Now I've already been on the phone to a couple of people who are interested in buying it. It may well be we end up selling it for more than we needed to. It's just a great shame we didn't sell it in the auction first time around.
So how many people do you have interested right now?
At the moment, I'm talking to 2 people. It may well be that I end up talking to more.
The story doesn't end here in London. From here, we're off to Copenhagen, where we'll meet a dinosaur that shared a similar fate on the auction block. Coming up next, you'll meet Misty, the Diplodocus. We'll be right back with more of the business of bones when this special edition of TechKnow in London continues. October 2009. In Las Vegas, Nevada, an unlikely scene of contrast unfolds.
We're starting here at $2.5 million.
A massive T-Rex named Samson is about to be auctioned off on the famed strip.
So, thank you, sir.
Samson eventually sold to a private collector for $4.6 million. Then it went on loan to Oregon's Museum of Science and Industry. The skull, weighing in at about 500 pounds, had its own glass case, but this story doesn't have a happy ending. After the museum exhibit ended, Samson was boxed up and shipped here to Santa Barbara, California. Why? Because it was bought by a private collector, the man behind Green Hill Software Company, located right behind me. Now, the only way to see Samson is to go inside this building behind closed doors. Inside the lobby sits what may be the most complete T-Rex skull ever recovered. It is clearly a piece that would be of value to science, but it doesn't appear much science is going on here. It kind of baffles my mind that it's just sitting there inside this lobby, and 20 people a month go to see it. Do you know where Samson is now?
I have no idea.
The skull of it is in the lobby of the company of the owner. And the rest of the bones are in boxes.
Right. There you go.
Dr. Luis Chiappe oversees one of the largest fossil collections in the U.S. Like many in the scientific community, he believes dinosaurs belong in museums, not sold at auction. Not everyone agrees. Now, there are scientists out there who study dinosaurs, and some of them would love to be able to work with a juvenile Allosaurus. However, if this goes into private hands, it may become off limits to them.
Well, it may, but you know, I'm kind of against this kind of new priesthood of academics and people that work in museums. I kind of think there has to be a kind of balance. Obviously, you want these things to be studied in a proper way, but most museums that have got dinosaurs have got more than enough on their plates to study as it is, and not enough manpower to do it.
The Raymond Alf Museum of Paleontology in Claremont, California has one of the largest collections of dinosaur tracks in the world. It's where TechKnow's Cara Santa Maria picks up our story.
You can actually work up here if you want to, a little bit closer.
This is what fossil research looks like. TechKnow was taken behind the scenes to get a view most of us don't get at a museum. The locker rooms, the back collection files, 170,000 bones, tagged and scanned in 3D. Once online, they will be available to anyone, anywhere to study. The ALF gets its bones from its own field digs. In 2009, they hit pay dirt. A rare Parasaurolophus, a baby dino they named Joe, now showcased in their collection.
How scientifically significant is this particular specimen?
So this specimen is really cool scientifically because it's the smallest, the youngest, and the most complete Parasaurolophus that's ever been found.
Dr. Andrew Farkey is the museum's director of research and collections.
This is here in your museum, and the reason for that is because your team found it.
Yep, yeah, we found it. We collected it under permit from the Bureau of Land Management. And then as part of that, we agree that it will always be available for scientific study and that it will always be public property.
So you don't own Joe?
We do not know. It's owned by the people of the U.S.
What would have been lost if Joe, for example, had been found on private land, dug up, and then sold to a private collector?
You just don't know. There's that uncertainty.
And so if it had ended up in a private collection, the youngest known Parasaurolophus may not be even known to science.
That's always a possibility.
Wow. That'd be a big loss.
Panel 167 now, the Diplodocus called Misty.
But not every museum piece comes from the museum's own scientists. Meet Misty, the Diplodocus. She was the prize at the Summers Place auction.
£400,000 and sold.
Misty had a secret buyer.
I can't tell you very much. The buyer has asked to remain anonymous.
It turns out the Diplodocus was headed for Copenhagen. TechKnow's Phil Torres visited her at Denmark's Natural History Museum.
Did you guys celebrate when you got the dinosaur?
We were singing and dancing.
Hanna Strager is the director of exhibits here. It's one of the greatest natural history museums I've ever seen. How popular is Misty?
I can say that we've never had any attention from the media or from the public. We had people lining up, not just in the museum, but outside the museum.
But that success comes at a price. Museums can't always afford to gamble with such high stakes. The Allosaurus that was just up for auction, were you interested in that?
Yes, but we couldn't find the money for it.
Misty and Little Al were both excavated by commercial dino hunter Raymond Albersdorfer.
But what a monster, huh? Is it 90 feet or something?
Largest one we've seen yet out here.
Yeah.
Some call him a modern-day Indiana Jones, if this version of Indy was in it for the money.
So it seems he does a mix of working with museums and working with private.
He does, absolutely. He earns his living by collecting fossils and selling them. But much of what he does ends up in museums. And the museums, to be honest with you, would never get the stuff if it wasn't for someone like Raymond.
We wanted to talk to Raymond Albersdorfer about the Allosaurus and his work as a private seller of bones. At first, he agreed, and we were going to go to Germany to meet him. But then he canceled on us before we could even buy our airline tickets. He said he was too ill and wouldn't be talking to TechKnow after all. In the end, Little Al didn't sell, not at the auction and not in the period afterwards. Scientists we spoke to said they would value a chance to study the juvenile specimen. What is Al's fate? Will his bones sit in boxes in a basement like Samson, or will he end up in a museum like Joe?
Because it's juvenile, they are so rare.
Despite what Errol and Rupert told us during our interview, scientists and dealers not involved with this sale said they were concerned this may not be a single rare juvenile after all.
The chances of two juveniles of the same species being preserved in the same area it's virtually inconceivable.
What's your response to that?
That's not the case. I mean, you definitely have many instances in which multiple juveniles have been found together. I'm not saying that that skeleton is not of one individual. It could perfectly well be.
In terms of history, the business of bones is a relative upstart. But the true value of our past lies in the mysteries long buried, and that may be too high a price for any one person to pay.
You have to remember, we're looking at something that's been buried for 150 million years. So we're the first ones to see this coming, being exposed, being unearthed. Even every little square inch of bone that gets exposed has been seen by no one else.
England is full of history, and this dinosaur auction is one for the books. What's the future of the business of bones? Hundreds of millions of years worth of history has yet to determine its fate. That's it for this episode of TechKnow here in London. We'll see you next time.
Dive deep into these stories and go behind the scenes at aljazeera.com/techknow. Follow our expert contributors on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google+, and more.